FSU is recruiting at a very high level right now, and we told you guys that would happen after the 10-win season. They've got a ton of momentum on the trail, and they've got a lot of things that look like they're breaking right in 2024 for that cycle. We're going to talk to you about 10 guys today that would probably sign with FSU if today was early signing day. These are guys that may or may not end up in the class, but they're guys that Florida State is trending extremely well for. We're going to talk to you about those 10 guys, share some insight on each of their recruitments, and then also give you some details on how you can learn even more about each of their recruitments after this video. Okay, number one, first up, James Madison II. He is a 6'3", 190-pound, four-star wide receiver out of St. Thomas Aquinas. Florida State already has 4 wide receivers in their signing class right now. We'll see how many of those end up staying with the Noles, but James Madison II is a very special talent who I think the Noles would certainly add to this class, and they are saving a spot for him. He was on campus twice during the spring, including the spring game. He's got an announcement coming on July 4th. Really think it would be the Noles if it was today. We'll see how things go over the next month and a half when we get to that July 4th date. Spoiler, we'll talk about this in a minute. He's not the only FSU target committing on July 4th or announcing his commitment on July 4th. And I think James Madison II is a really special, talented athlete. You can't teach 6'3". He's a big kid. I think the Noles would take him in a heartbeat, and I think he would take the Noles in a heartbeat if it was coming today. Next up is Jonathan Daniels. Jonathan's a 5-star offensive tackle according to On3. He's a 4-star everywhere else. No doubt about it. A super talented, big kid, 6'5", 280, 285 from Pensacola, Florida. He is really special. We did a video on him specifically recently where he named FSU his leader. There's really not a lot more to say outside of that. FSU is in the pole position for him. It's really theirs to lose, right? They've got the 10-point lead with a minute to go, right? And it's just like, don't choke it away. Don't let it slip. Don't screw it up. Keep Jonathan Daniels in the boat, and you should sign one of the best, according to On3, the best offensive tackle in the country. Obviously, Alex Atkins does a great job. Florida State has done a very good job turning their offensive line room around. Jonathan Daniels would be a huge piece to help continue to solidify that. Got a couple more offensive linemen that we'll talk about. Next up is Manis Ititi. He is a 6'5", 290-pound offensive from Modesto, California. He's a 4-star, and he's another blue chip that FSU is picking up a lot of steam with. He visits Utah in mid-June, and then he visits FSU the very next week. I think that's the weekend of the 23rd. He was on campus for the spring game. Ultimately, I really like where Florida State sits with their relationship with him. I think that it's really big that they've got him on campus already from the West Coast once. They're going to get him on campus here again in about a month and a half, 2 months. And they're stacking that with another offensive line target that we'll talk about here in just a minute. But I really like where they sit for Manis right now. I do think that if today was signing day, he would be signing with the Noles. I don't really have a lot of doubts in my mind about that. You're going to have to fight off some West Coast teams to keep him locked in if he does end up committing to Florida State. But I do think that he is somebody that is trending very well toward the Noles. The other offensive lineman that they are going to pair with him on that visit is Jason Zander Mella. Zander Mella is a 6'3", 286-pound offensive guard. He's out of Clearwater, Florida. He has an official visit coming up in the same week that ITT visits Utah. He is visiting USC. Then that next weekend, that weekend of the 23rd, Zander Mella visits Florida State with ITT. I love the way that Florida State is stacking that weekend. It's going to be the biggest weekend of the year, but getting both huge offensive line targets on campus that same weekend, both to be around Alex Atkins, really big for the Noles. I think the Noles need to keep applying pressure. If I had to pick right now, I'd say the Noles certainly lead for Zander Mella. I think that they're in a really good spot for him, and they need to continue to apply pressure to make sure that he is part of their really good offensive line class. You're looking at 3 blue chip guys right here, and that's if FSU doesn't add others. Next up is Dylan Stevenson. He's the one we alluded to earlier that is going to be making his – wait, is he? No, Fox is. Never mind. All right, one more time. Next up is Dylan Stevenson. He is a four-star edge prospect out of Christopher Columbus High School in Miami, Florida. 6'4", 225 pounds. Big kid. I think he is close to pulling the trigger. I believe that that could happen sometime in May or June. I think FSU is in a great spot for him. People I've spoken with think that he's going to be a Seminole. He's going to pick the Noles over Miami and some others. I've put in some predictions on our Discord. If you haven't joined that, it is free to join. The link will be down in the description. It's the very first link in the description. So go join us today. He's probably the next person that I'll put an official prediction in for. I like to put those in and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 of how confident I am. I don't typically put predictions in that are not above a 65 or 70%. But go check those out on the Discord. I really like what Dylan Stevenson brings. I do think he will be a Seminole. I think that he is somebody that is liking in closer and closer to making that decision, and I do believe that decision is going to be Florida State. I think the Noles are trending up incredibly well for him. Next up, before we get to him, actually, I'm going to give a little bit of love to our friends over at Garnet and Gold. Garnet and Gold is the #1 retailer when it comes to FSU licensed apparel, merchandise, goods. Make sure that you're shopping there. It's garnetandgold.com right there outside of the stadium. They are a must-stop on game day if you're going up for any of the softball regionals or super regionals. Make sure you stop in there first. Garnetandgold.com. Use code NOSLAW. That's NOSLAW to get 15% off your order. Again, garnetandgold.com. Great partners, great Seminoles. They give back to our teams through NIL, and they give back to the boosters. Make sure that you're supporting garnetandgold.com. All right, next up is a 4-star safety. His name is Brandon Jacob. 6'1.5", 6'2", 170 pounds, out of Orlando, Florida. He is a 4-star. He's probably your most realistic replacement for Jordan Pride. He is a top 200 kid. I know that Pride was right around that 100 mark. I'd actually expect Pride to fall a little bit in the rankings after his injury. I could see Jacob rising a bit, and I think that he'll end up being the better prospect than Pride, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Here's where the Noles can look to kind of backfill and restock that safety position with the decommitment of Jordan Pride, who, of course, ended up over at A&M. Noles are in a really good spot here. Would have really liked to see Brandon Jacob at the spring game. That didn't work out. I don't know that he's anywhere close to making a decision, or I'm not making an official prediction on this just yet. But again, if today was early signing day, if today was the day that the rubber met the road, I think Brandon Jacob would be a Seminole. You got to watch out for UCF here, hometown kid there, but I do think Brandon Jacob ultimately picks the Noles. Next up is another 4-star. He's an athlete out of Tallahassee, Florida, Makai Danzy. 6'1", 175 pounds. He's a 4-star athlete. And though he plays at Florida State High School, and though he's from Tallahassee, I think he's a kid who really wants to just enjoy this process and not just sign with FSU because he's from the area. But at the end of the day, I think the Noles have done a really good job of making him feel like he's a priority and not just a given, not just somebody that they have locked up because he's from there. Sometimes kids want to get away. Sometimes kids want to go elsewhere. They want to pick up and start college somewhere new and not be in their hometown. And I completely get that. But I think the Noles have done a good job of emphasizing that Danzy is a priority. I think he ends up in the Garnet and Gold. I think the Noles have done a good job solidifying that. And I think they're leading from the front here. I think that this is a kid that will ultimately end up in Florida State's class. They'll retain the local talent. They'll keep the local talent home. And he'll be a big get for the Seminoles. Next up is Jalewis Solomon. He's our 8th prospect that we're looking at today. He is 6 foot, 185 pounds. He's an athlete, 4-star out of Ellaville, Georgia. Really talented kid. I think FSU will very likely get an official visit announced here shortly. Solomon is trending FSU's way as of now. He is teammates with linebacker Zayden Walker, a 2025 linebacker that Florida State seems to be trending well for as well. He did visit FSU this past weekend, and he's been in Tallahassee more than anywhere else in the country. I think the Noles are in really good shape for him. I think he's a kid that is leaning FSU's way. Again, if today was signing day, if today was his prediction day, that would certainly be one that I think the Noles would pick up. and I think that'd be a prospect that they would certainly welcome to the class. Another blue chip athlete from Georgia, from a talent-rich area, teammates with a very highly regarded and very talented kid in Zayden Walker in 2025. I think that they would take Jalewis Solomon almost immediately. Last couple, and these two are special, and here's why. I have put official predictions in for both of these last two guys. So go over to our Discord and check those out if you haven't already. Link again in the description. First up, Kylen Fox. I expect him to pick the Noles when he decides. He just said that he is going to be deciding on July 4th. The same as James Madison, who we talked about earlier. I expect that pick to be the Noles. Fox is a 6'5", 217-pound tight end, 4-star, very good friends with Landon Thomas. Those two are going to make an absolute defensive coordinator on the other side of the ball have nightmares. Kylen Fox, I do believe, will be a Seminole. Now, things can change, and we're a little over 2 months away from that, or a little under 2 months away from that announcement. But I would expect him to be a Seminole. I think that he ends up ultimately picking the Noles on July 4th. We'll see what happens between now and then. Again, go to the Discord for a little bit more of my thoughts on Kylen Fox. And then lastly, here's one that you maybe have been waiting for, our 1 5-star of the grouping, Charles Lester. He's a 5-star cornerback out of Sarasota, Florida. We've done several videos on him, 6'2", 170 pounds, class of 24, of course, as all these guys are. Lester is another guy that I've put a prediction in for. I've also assigned a score to that I'll make you get over to the Discord to actually see, to actually get that info. But I believe that Charles Lester would be a Seminole if today was signing day. Another guy that publicly came out and said that FSU was his leader, that's where he was leaning toward. Again, Florida State, you're up late in the fourth quarter here. You just got to hold on to it. You got to get that signature once December rolls around, once early signing day is here. You got to get him in the fold. And I think the Noles will. I think they've done a great job with Lester. He's visited Tallahassee and Florida State more than anywhere else. He's talked about wanting to take this all the way until December. His official visit actually set for the end of July. He's taking his official visit to Florida State after visiting everywhere else. I think that's a good sign for the Noles. You always want to get that last official visit, make that last impression on a kid. I think that that's going to be big. I don't know that he announces then. He said he's going to wait till December, but I've talked to some people and it wouldn't shock me if he announced before the season starts. So keep your eyes peeled there on Charles Lester. Again, we've shared a lot of info about him over in the Discord, over in the private chats. We've got about 2,000 FSU fans over there talking nonstop FSU football each and every day. So go check it out. We're building quite a community there, and it is a lot of fun to be part of. FSU recruiting trending way up. What we've basically just told you today is that if today was early signing day, the Noles would pick up 10 blue chip prospects. They already have a top 5, top 10 class going right now. If they're to sign these 10 prospects that we've told you about, they're going to finish with a very close to top 5 class. There are other guys that I still think they're very much in the mix for. I just wouldn't call them locks or say that it's all the way done yet. I think they've got a great shot with JoJo Trader. I think they've got a great shot with Jamari Howard, who just decommitted from Michigan State this weekend. I think there's a lot of good things trending very positively for the Seminoles, but these are guys who I think they are nearly locked in on. Now, you got to stay locked in, and you got to keep them in the fold. You can't take your foot off the gas. You can't take your foot off the pedal. You can't give up the big lead in the fourth quarter, which is what they would do if they missed on some of these guys. But I think that all of these guys are trending very closely to being Seminoles, and we're going to keep you updated on all of that. So stay tuned, stay locked in with the channel, hit the subscribe button. We've got more good news coming from Florida State coming your way. We did a video, again, on Dabo making some waves in conference realignment and how the Seminoles and Mike Norvell and Michael Alford should join him in making some waves. Do me a favor and click right here to watch that.